You ever wonder who supplies our nation with drugs? Drug cartels? Where are they from? How do they operate? What about street level distribution of drugs? Who takes care of that? Those are the topics we're going to discuss today on this version of Street Smart Shawn. Welcome, my name is Shawn Bain, and for the next several minutes, that's going to be our topic, drug cartels. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the Mexican drug cartels to start out. Now, this has no bearing on citizens from anywhere in the United States here to live the American dream, whether they're from Mexico or China or wherever. That's not who I'm talking about. Let's face it, we have individuals in our country here to mean us harm. That is who I'm talking about. And it's not just the Mexican drug cartels. There are other cartels that are operating within the United States. But we need to start with the Mexican drug cartels because they are the most prevalent. Why? They border us. They control most of the illegal distribution of drugs in our country. So listed here are the 9 major cartels that are operating around the world. Now, notice these cartels have cartel leaders mentioned under their names. Guys, this changes all the time. Nearly every name on this chart is now either dead, imprisoned, or displaced. Most oftentimes, you do not remain a cartel a leader or member for very long. Everything changes within a few weeks to a few months to a few years, guys. So let's look at the 2025 National Drug Threat Assessment from DEA. It kind of says it all right here, guys. Mexican cartels' production, trafficking, and distribution of powerful illicit synthetic drugs, mainly fentanyl analogs and methamphetamine, represent a dire threat to the public health, the rule of law, and the national security of the U.S. The production and trafficking of drugs by these cartels has fundamentally altered the drug and criminal landscapes in North America. You can't get too more of a bold statement than that. So let's talk about the influence of these cartels on Mexico. If you look at the cartels, just in Mexico, there are over 175,000 active cartel members. They make up Mexico's 5th largest employer. Imagine that. More than 350 new recruits come into these cartels each week. Why? Like I said before, being a cartel member, your employment career is really dwindled. I mean, you don't remain a drug cartel member long. They're either killed, locked up, or something else bad happens. As a matter of fact, 37% of known members are lost within a decade of joining the ranks. And you talk about recruitment of these cartel members. A lot of times it's not voluntary, guys, where they're coming to a certain person that might fit their profile, namely dual citizenship people who have dual citizenship within the United States and Mexico. That's who they want. So imagine I'm down there in Mexico and I possess dual citizenship. That's who they're going to recruit. And guess what they're going to tell me? You're going to join the cartel whether you like it or not, because if you don't, I've got pictures of your father, your mother, your relatives, your children. They're all gone. They're all going to die unless you work for me. That is the recruitment techniques that are going on, guys. So let's talk about specifically 2 of the major cartels that are operating. Why? Because they are the most prevalent. The first one is the Sinaloa drug cartel. Where they come from? The state of Sinaloa down in Mexico. And you probably, if you think of the Sinaloa drug cartel, you probably think of El Chapo, that guy there on the right, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Yeah, he was the leader of the Sinaloa drug cartel for years. If you don't know anything about El Chapo, get on Netflix. There's all kinds of stories on movies about him, how he kept getting locked up in federal prisons down there in Mexico. And what would happen? He would escape through a magical tunnel, and then he'd get out and be drug trafficking and all kinds of different crimes again, until finally the federales were able to keep him locked up long enough for us to extradite the United States. What happened to El Chapo? He went to federal court in New York City, where he was found guilty of all kinds of different crimes. And he was sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. I love how the feds put plus 30 on there. But yes, he got life in prison plus 30 years. So he was an historic figure with the Sinaloa drug cartel. Once El Chapo got arrested, one of his brothers took on a leadership role, and then a couple of his sons took on leadership roles until they were captured. Now we have other leadership roles. And the cartel, the Sinaloa drug cartel, kind of split within the last couple years. You had the Los Mayos and the Los Chapitos sections. Los Chapitos were the Chapo Guzman section, the Guzman family section, and then you had the other section, which was the Los Mayos. Well, the leader of Los Mayos was also arrested. You see there, Mr. Garcia was arrested as well. So once these two major players got arrested, they kind of split apart. So now with the Chapito section, El Chapo's remaining two sons who are out still controlling the cartel, they are Jesus and Ivan. You see here we have a $10 million reward for their capture, but they are the number one most cited cartel in the world today. They are in every state in the United States, and they control a lot of the fentanyl and the methamphetamine trafficking throughout the United States. So they've been in the news a lot over about the last year. You see, we've been getting a lot more cooperation with the Mexican government than we ever had before. Mexico has a president named Claudia Sheinbaum. She has given a lot of serious consideration to the U.S. government involving the Mexican cartels. And that's a danger for her. I mean, historically, if you think about Mexico and drug trafficking, there has been all kinds of assassinations and assassination attempts on presidential candidates, judges, police chiefs, federales, all kinds of different attorneys who are prosecuting their cases. So there's a lot of corruption down there in Mexico. But Claudia Sheinbaum, she's probably got her head on a swivel right now and a strong contingent of security forces, because she's got to watch herself because of the cooperation she's given us. Because of her cooperation, we have been able, the United States, have been able to extradite 30 of the top 50 upper echelon of the Sinaloa drug cartel within the last year and a half. And that's really good news for the United States, because it is disrupting their chain of command. It is disrupting logistics. It is disrupting command structure. And that's good for us. The cartels have been in chaos. And the Sinaloa drug cartel, because of this chaos and because of the disruption of their supply chain of fentanyl and other drugs, they've now had to work more with other cartels as well. So they're not working independently anymore. They're working with a lot of different organizations as well. Another big story that happened recently with the Sinaloa drug cartel was this one. I don't know if anybody saw the story about Ryan Wedding. Yeah, Ryan Wedding was an Olympic snowboarder from Canada. At the same time, Ryan Wedding is an Olympic snowboarder from Canada. He is El Jefe with the Sinaloa drug cartel. Ryan Wedding and the Sinaloa drug cartel are to have alleged to bring 60 tons of cocaine a year from Mexico through the United States into Canada, and supplied most of Canada with cocaine for years. An amazing story. Such an amazing story. You watch. Within probably a year or two from now, there'll be a Netflix movie about Ryan Wedding. It's that cool of a story. Now, Ryan Wedding, he has been on our 10 most wanted list for a long time. $15 million reward for Ryan Wedding's capture. We were unable to do it for several years. Why? Because the Sinaloa drug cartel was hiding about in Mexico City. Now, if you know anything about Mexico City, huge city. It's like trying to hide somebody in New York City. Pretty easy to do. Well, we had intel reports where Ryan Wedding was staying. So our FBI contacts the Mexican government, who gives permission for our FBI to go down there, work with Mexican military forces, and they were able to capture Ryan Wedding. So pretty cool stories that have been going on recently in the news about the Sinaloa drug cartel. Now, the next cartel we're going to talk about is, boy, it's an up and coming cartel. It is rivaling that of the Sinaloa drug cartel. They are a very violent cartel. A lot of human trafficking and drug trafficking involved with this cartel. They are probably the most militarized cartel the world's ever seen. We're talking about the utilization of automatic weapons and armored vehicles, RPGs, hand grenades, drones, very well-equipped cartel. And they come from the state of Jalisco down in Mexico. They are built on an interesting kind of business model, and they are cells that buy into a brand of supply and protection. They don't just, like many of these cartels, they're not just involved with drugs. They're involved with fuel theft. It is amazing all the fuel theft that's happening down in Mexico. Extortion. We're talking about all kinds of fraud, and we talked about human trafficking. And where are the proceeds going through? Their proceeds from their criminal enterprise is being laundered through Chinese networks with crypto exchanges and bulk cash. It is amazing. Also, like the Sinaloa cartel, their major drugs that they are bringing into the United States and elsewhere through the world is mainly fentanyl and cocaine and methamphetamine as well. They're involved with a lot of counterfeit pills. Those counterfeit pills that are pressed to make it look like an Oxycontin or a Percocet or a Xanax or an Adderall. Those counterfeit pills, which are killing a lot of Americans, a lot of those are coming from CJNG, and they're simply pressed fentanyl or pressed methamphetamine pills, those type of things. So those are the two major cartels that are operating within the United States. A couple other things about the Sinaloa drug cartel. Their leader has, I don't know if you watched the news on this, but they've had a leader for a while now called El Mencho. Well, El Mencho was recently killed early in 2026. It was a pretty crazy story. You know, we've been listening to our federal government, our CIA, have been listening to a bunch of phone calls with El Mencho, trying to pinpoint where he's at, because he, again, was on our 10 most wanted list. Well, through their phone calls, listening to their phone calls, Title III wiretaps and so forth, they were able to discover that El Mencho was getting ready to have a little rendezvous with one of his mistresses. They found out where it was going to be. So they called the Mexican military. They surrounded the place. A big old shootout happened. During that gun battle, El Mencho was killed, along with, unfortunately, about 30 other Mexican military and 30 other cartel members. So it was amazing what happened. Chaos erupted after this shootout, and word happened that El Mencho was killed. You see, the state of Jalisco sits over towards the west coast of Mexico, Pacific Ocean side. Guadalajara is the capital of Jalisco, huge city. Well, over towards the western portion of the state, towards the Pacific Ocean, are very beautiful resort areas. Puerto Vallarta, Cabo San Lucas is nearby. If you've never been to those areas, or if you have, you know they're some of the most beautiful areas of the world. And a lot of Americans like to visit there, and they like to vacation there. Imagine, we're simply there on vacation in our resort in Puerto Vallarta when you know what breaks loose outside, and now what's happening? You're ordered to shelter in place in your resort. Why? Because these other cartel members just found out their boss was killed, and what were they doing? Firebombing public buses, public taxis, shutting public transportation down. They shut the airport down. Imagine how frightening that would be. Now, that chaos lasted a couple days until the military was able to get it under control and the Americans were able to travel freely again. But it was chaos there for a while. We have started to see some of that chaos reduce because there's a new leader. But before I get to that new leader, I want to talk about the funeral services at El Mencho and how much money's involved, guys. I don't know if you can see that picture there on the left, but that's a gold casket. El Mencho was buried in a gold coffin estimated to be worth $1 million. That's the amount of money involved with these cartels, guys. So who's the new leader of CJNG? Well, it was the guy everybody suspected would be the new leader. Why? Because he was second in command at the time. Now, interesting thing about Mr. Gonzalez here. He is United States born. He was born in California, so he holds dual citizenship. And that's scary. That he holds dual citizenship between the U.S. and Mexico. He's El Mencho's stepson, and he was the kind of the de facto second in command there for a while, so they kind of figured he'd be the one to take over. There's already a $5 million reward for Mr. Gonzalez here, who is now the leader of CJNG. All right. There's other cartels, not just those two, but those are the most prominent. You know, we have the La Familia Miocon, Beltran Levia cartel, the Gulf cartel. But the two I really specifically talked about are the major cartels operating down in Mexico. So let's talk about the chemical flow of these precursors. These are the chemicals needed to make all these different drugs like methamphetamine, like fentanyl analogs. And you can see where they're coming from, guys, mainly from China, some from India, and some from South Korea. You're going to see as we go through these slides a common denominator here, and that's China. Now, China has placed a lot of export controls on different fentanyl precursors or ingredients to make fentanyl, but there's a lot of it still happening, guys. And where do those chemicals go from those countries into Canada, into the west coast of the United States, and into Mexico, where the Mexican drug cartels create all these different fentanyl analogs that are crosses our southern border, guys. All right, so the global presence of these two big cartels, Sinaloa and Jalisco, you can see by this slide, it is amazing. It's not just a United States or North America issue. It's a worldwide issue, guys. Allegedly, Sinaloa cartel is in 72 different countries worldwide, 60 countries for CJNG. So it's just amazing their overall worldwide presence that they have. All right, so let's switch gears and switch to Colombian cartels. Now, you think Colombian cartels, you probably think cocaine. Why? Well, that's the South America, countries like Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Peru, perfect growing conditions for the cocoa plant. So from the cocoa plant, what do we extract? We extract the cocoa paste, which in a laboratory setting, we can convert into cocaine hydrochloride, the type of cocaine we would snort or convert to crack cocaine and smoke. That's where cocaine comes from, South America. Colombia in particular for years and years and years. And if you think of Colombian drug cartels, you probably think of Pablo Escobar. He was in charge of the Medellin cartel. And if you look at one point in time, Pablo Escobar, most notorious drug kingpin the world's ever seen, he had, way back then, we're talking guys in the 70s, his net worth was about $30 billion. His cartel controlled 80% of the global cocaine trade. Just amazing. The Gulf cartel has historically also been a major cartel down in South America, and they're still active today. However, they are not the most prevalent. We've kind of switched away from these cartels because when Pablo was killed, the Medellin cartel went away. But the major cartel now is the Gulf Clan. They are in control of most of the cocaine distribution. I can tell you this, guys, we have a lot of cocaine that is coming into our country right now. It is amazing. I'll just give you an example of one seizure that happened recently among several. If you look at this situation here, this case that happened November of 2025, it was at the Port Everglades. 49,000 pounds of cocaine, estimated to be worth $362 million, was seized on a ship by the Coast Guard back in November of 2025. Just amazing, extraordinary amounts of cocaine coming into our country. So let's talk about something that's kind of flowing under the radar. And when we think about Chinese organizations that are involved with drugs, probably the first thing that comes to our mind is fentanyl analogs, because they're supplying most of the chemicals to make fentanyl. And we're thinking about Chinese chemists that are manufacturing chemicals to make methamphetamine throughout the world. That's generally what we think about. But what's flying under the radar is how Chinese organized crime is involved with illegal marijuana in our country. We have a lot of Chinese immigrants that has came into the United States and bought up huge plots of land in our heartland, states like Oklahoma, where it is estimated that illegal marijuana production by these Chinese criminal organizations are estimated just in Oklahoma to be anywhere from $18 billion to $44 billion business. Just amazing. And you look at, this isn't something that's happened overnight. I mean, this is something that's been going on for a while, and it's still very active today. Let's just look at June of 2026, where California deputy sheriffs raided a large-scale illegal grow tied to Chinese organized crime and finding thousands of illicit greenhouses full of millions of marijuana plants. So this is a huge thing that's happening in our country that a lot of us don't even know that's happening. All right. So these big cartels, right? They bring in massive amounts of drugs into our country and eventually into our bigger cities, in our different states. And what happens then? Well, generally, these cartels pass off these wholesale amounts of drugs to local distributors. And those local distributors throughout our country, let me go back here. Those local distributors are mostly street level gangs. So let's look at it from a national perspective first. Over 33,000 street gangs, prison gangs, and motorcycle gangs are active in the United States. That's according to the FBI. 33,000 or more, with hundreds of thousands of members. Number one is gangs. Gangs remain a predominant retail or street level distributors. And they are connecting with these big cartels like I talked about, whether it's the Mexican drug trafficking organizations or so forth. So what do we have in our communities? Well, we have national gangs that have local affiliations throughout the country. I'll give you an example of the Crips and the Bloods. Gangs we're probably familiar with originated out in LA area. Well, we have Crips and the Bloods affiliated organizations throughout the United States. We have the Pagans and the Iron Horsemen, which are outlaw motorcycle gangs, the Heartless Felons, and all kinds of different organizations that are out there. We also have multi-continental organizations that are active in our communities, like TDA, Tren de Aragua, which is a very violent criminal organization or enterprise in Venezuela. We also have MS-13 from El Salvador, a very violent gang. These type of criminal enterprises are in our communities within the United States, guys. We have all of them. So we need to think about that street level distribution. Now, once it comes in, I'm going to use Columbus, Ohio as an example because that's where I'm from and that's where I worked in law enforcement. So I know the Columbus area pretty well. So let's just say it's the Sinaloa drug cartel and they're just bringing in, let's say, cocaine. They're bringing in a shipment of cocaine into Columbus. Local gangs will then take that drug and cut it, step on it. So what do I mean by the term cut or stepped on? Dilute it. Some sort of chemical adulterant. Why? Well, I got to eat too. I got to make my money. So I'll dilute my dope to make more of it. Give you an example. Let's say I have a pound of cocaine in this hand and I have a pound of cocaine cut in this hand. A lot of common cocaine cuts historically, inositol, mannitol, those type of agents. So I take, let's say, a pound of inositol, add it to a pound or lidocaine or whatever, a pound of inositol and add it to my pound of cocaine. Now I have 2 pounds of cocaine, double my profit. But I got to be careful as a local dealer because if I dilute it too much, I'm not going to be a drug dealer very long. So there's a fine line between cutting it too much and not enough. So they're going to dilute the dope at the local level to make money. And generally reformulation happens at the local level. I'll give you another example of cocaine. Let's say I'm in a city, St. Louis or whatever city you want to pick there. And we have a powder cocaine come into our city from one of these major cartels. Local gangs in St. Louis will then what? If my clientele prefers crack cocaine, rock cocaine, the freebase smokable form, then I'm going to convert it through an easy process. And when we do later presentations, I do later trainings for you guys, I'm going to talk specifically about crack cocaine and powder cocaine. And it's a very easy process to convert that powder cocaine into crack cocaine. That is generally done at the local level by street level distribution. So me being from Ohio, I just want to talk about our Ohio HIDA. That's a high intensity drug trafficking areas. I want to talk about, if you think about drug task force commanders, 74% of the drug task force commanders in Ohio report gangs were involved in their narcotics trafficking in their jurisdictions. So you can see how generally that's what happens, guys. Okay? All right. So that is how we take drugs from all over the world. They get in the United States and from whom, and then how they get to our doorsteps, guys. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. And please, if you can, share with someone, subscribe, and hope to see you guys again very, very soon.